Hey, you little bundle of trouble. Here's Escape to Mars again. We've read chapters 1, 2, and 3 from Billy, Amber, and Billy. And today's chapter 4, which is by Amber. All right. If there's one thing I know for sure, it's that boys can't draw worth beans. We had to sit in that room for hours while the adults argued about this and that. And the only thing Billy and I had to do was draw on my coloring books with my colored pencils. He messed them all up. He tried to make Ariel look like G.I. Joe. Boys are defective. Anyway, I had to write this section because Billy's brain couldn't handle coloring and listening at the same time. I could, and here's generally what happened. Mrs. Chen, that's Billy's mom, kept asking about practical stuff like breathing, eating, and drinking, while my dad was worried about getting enough fuel to the spaceship all the way to Mars and to land it safely. The conversations went something like this. Where are we supposed to get enough water to drink? Mrs. Chen would ask. The X-2000 simply wasn't designed to land on Mars, Dad would say, at about exactly the same time. We have no idea how it will behave in the Mars atmosphere. Besides that, we need to find a place to land. Somebody downloaded the latest Martian maps onto this disk, Mr. Chen would say, but of course there was no somebody to run and do it. Fellows, excuse me, but what are good our fuel and maps going to do if we die of thirst before we get there? Mrs. Chen persisted. Why isn't there a computer in this room? Mr. Chen said, annoyed. It's not a big problem. They have these things over in Building 5 that can recycle all our wastewater. So long as we don't toss any out the hatch, we should be okay. That was Mr. Brody. I'd seen him around NASA with Dad before. He's nice. At least he tried to pay attention to Mrs. Chen. We need a computer in this room, Mr. Chen said again, oblivious to everything else. Those things in Building 5, Mrs. Chen continued. Don't we need to put them on the spacecraft? They're not going to do any good down here. Hydroponics, Miss Roberts said. I don't know where she was from, but somehow she became part of the crew. She seemed to pick up on Mrs. Chen's shopping list idea. We need to get the entire contents of the hydroponics lab into the payload section. That will give us air and food. My dad can take a lot of pressure. After all, he's an astronaut. But the tension was getting to him. He slammed his fist on the table and stood up, then paced around the room with a scowl on his face. Look, I can sneak a little girl into a low-security building, but how do you expect me to move an acre of wheat into the X-2000 without anybody noticing? This is beyond silly. We need cranes and trucks and payload engineers. We can't do this without official authorization. I guess everyone knew that Dad was right. The room became quiet. So quiet that even Billy looked up from trying to draw a holster on Ariel's hips. It looked stupid. They'll never approve it, Mr. Chen said. It'll get tied up in red tape. People will argue about who should be going. Along those lines, Miss Roberts chimed in, why are we the chosen few? Who says that we get to live while the rest of the planet dies? Complete silence fell over the room again. Nobody seemed to have an answer for her. But then the door opened, and everybody jumped with nerves. I guess we thought this was a secret meeting. Anyway, an old man with white hair came in. I think he was from Dr. Chen's lab, but everybody seemed to know him. It's just the way it's got to be, Miss Roberts, he said, answering her question. Our projections show that the crust of the Earth will collapse in less than a month, killing every human being on the planet. The X-2000 shuttle has to launch tomorrow. The next possible launch window is a week away. I'm sure we can't keep the secret that long. And once word gets out, there will be rioting and violence in the streets. Millions of people will descend on Cocoa Beach and try to get into that shuttle. He shook his head gravely. No, I've selected a crew of 8. The 7 in this room, plus a doctor. And that's the way it has to be. There's no time to argue about it. Circumstances are out of control. You can call it fate if you like, but there's not any choice in the matter. Dr. MacGyver's, Mr. Chen said. We can't live on Mars in the shell of a crashed and burned out shuttle. We need water, purification systems, we need crops, we need fuel, we need medicine. I'm sure we need 100 things that we'll never think of before tomorrow. And we have to load it into the shuttle. How are we going to do that? Chen is right, Dad said. We can't do this without the NASA bureaucracy. Nobody knows how to calculate the right fuel mix for takeoff. or pilot our course to Mars, or any of the 1,000 things we'll have to do to make this work. This isn't Apollo 13. The X-2000 can't be fixed with duct tape and strips of paper. Again, an eerie silence fell in the room. It even affected Billy. He stopped drawing. He was trying to figure out how to put a mermaid on a horse. What a moron. No, Chad, Dr. MacGyver said to my dad. This is exactly like Apollo 13. We're going to blast you into space with a garage full of junk, and you're going to figure out how to turn it into a new home for a new humanity on a new planet. And if you fail, then that's the end of history. All right, well, that's the end of chapter 4, Amber's chapter. Hope you like that, Gracie Poo.